Hi, everybody. My name is Colby, and I'm going to be sharing the story called Manabozho Plays Lacrosse. This story is a legend, and it is from the Menomini tribe. The story takes place in a third person perspective, and the type of story is, as I mentioned, it's a legend, and it's about like learning lessons and sort of about how we, can get a taste of our own medicine, like having consequences for our actions in life. And the location in the story is the lacrosse game, which happens on Lake Michigan. And there's two goals, the Detroit goal and the Chicago goal. And then the center of the field is a place called Sturgeon Bay, called Quesosasit, which means where the sun is marked on the rocks. And so that's where the game is happening, but the game isn't happening between humans. It's happening between these celestial beings, the beings above and the beings below. And so the beings above you can think of as all the birds and the flying winged ones, the eagles, the geese, the ducks, all of those things, the thunderers, they call them. And then the beings below, who are ruled by the great white underground bear, and those are things that live beneath the earth, or on the earth, the fishes, the otters, the snakes, and all of the beings of the field, the running deer and elk and things like that. So the problem in the story is that Manabozho, through his anger and lustrous, fear or desire for revenge, shoots his arrows at the underground gods. And that's where, the story's lessons come in about, because he acted on that anger towards the gods, that same sort of energy, that medicine that he gave came back to him. And it came back through the water, which was chasing him up a tree. And that's how he ended up saving himself, was by climbing up the tree to stop from drowning from the water. And I thought it was interesting because he shoots two arrows at each of the gods in the story. And when he goes to climb the pine tree tells him, I don't have enough power to save you from all this water. I only have enough strength to grow 4 more lengths. And I think that the 4 lengths were representative of how he shot 2 arrows at the 2 gods. And so 4 arrows he shot, so he got 4 lengths of the tree to save himself. And he didn't end up dying in the story, which I'll tell momentarily. But he got that fear of death and that sort of energy that came back at him to teach him a lesson about his actions, basically. And so I think the cultural knowledge gained from this story is about how the medicine we give out to others, whether good or bad, through our actions and our words and the way we live our lives, those things that we create in the world, whether good or bad, will come back to us. And in whatever form they take, in the story, it takes the form of the water that, goes after him. And so, yeah, it's a great story. I enjoyed it. I read it tons, so I'm going to tell it now, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. So, Manabozho Plays Lacrosse. It was the beings above challenging the beings below to a mighty game of lacrosse. And the gods of the higher realms called upon their beings, all the geese, all the ducks, all the fowls, all the thunderers, to play for them during the mighty game. And the great white underground bear also called upon all of his powers, the powers below, the snakes, the fishes, the otters, all the beings of the field who run through the fields, the deer and the elk, and probably the horses. They don't mention that, but all of those kind of animals. And so they would take human form to play in this game for the gods. And the goals were chosen, one at Chicago, the other at Detroit, and then Lake Michigan being kind of like the whole span of the game. And then the center of the field is called Quesosasit, which translates to the place on the rocks where the sun is marked. And so on the day of the mighty game, or the preparation for the mighty game, Manabozho happens to be walking along, and he hears a loud whooping and all of these kind of loud, there's this excitement happening. And so he goes to see what's happening. And he happens along this little fellow who looks like a tiny Indian named Nakuti, who is a sunfish. And he says, "Sunfish, what is happening? Like, what's going on right now?" And the Nakuti says to Manabozho, "Haven't you heard? There's a mighty lacrosse game happening between the beings above who've challenged the beings below." And Manabozho's like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't know this was happening. Like, this is a huge deal. And I need to see more. Like, I need to get to this game, even though I wasn't invited." And then skips off that little Nakuti, the sunfish is gone, and Manabozho decides to, get a little feel for what's going on with the game. And so the gods are climbing up onto a high mountain. The gods climbed up from the waters, and they've chosen this spot high on the mountain where it has a good vantage point to see the game. And Manabozho follows their tracks and sneaks up to find out where they're going to be viewing the game so that he can position himself to have a good view and see what's going to happen. And so the next morning, very early, Manabozho goes to his spot and he uses his magic to turn himself into a pine tree, a lofty pine tree that's burnt on one side. And so he can view the game without anyone, the gods especially, knowing that he's there. And so he has some magic to create himself into a pine tree. And then, so from there, he hears that morning, as he's the pine tree, he hears all of these like loud cackles and whoopings and how and hoo and all of these calls to urge on the enemy. The two sides are kind of like, building each other up, working up to this big game. And so the game is starting to begin, and all of the beings from below, the powers from below, summoned by the great white underground bear, make their big, monstrous, exciting entrance. And then they're silent for a time, and they're in human form now, just taking the field. And then the sky grows dark, and it's the thunders making their appearance, and all the cackles and hooting and all the crazy bird calls are coming, just making a huge swarm in the sky and making their entrance on their side of the field, and then taking human form and having some silence for a time. And so they decided how they'd set up the game was they're going to have the weakest players at the goals and the strongest players in the center. And the center of the field is, as I mentioned, the place on Sturgeon Bay. And so the game begins, and it's very exciting. There's a lot of dynamic energy. No one scored any goals yet. We start to move into the game. But then, there's some activity, and it looks like that they're going to get it into the Chicago goal. And Manabozho, he's up there on the mountain high, hidden from the gods as a pine tree. And he is getting so excited because there's all this activity in the game, and it's getting really, really close to a goal possibly happening, and the other team scoring a goal on the Chicago side. And Manabozho gets so worked up by his excitement that he accidentally forgot he was a tree and poof, turned back into his normal, form, his self. And he looks around, and he's like really freaked out, wondering if any of the gods noticed him, but nobody did notice him. And so that fueled his anger, and he felt this like lustrous need for revenge for what had happened. And so he takes his bow and arrow, which he always carries with him, and he aims twice, or he aims rather, and shoots twice at each of the two gods. So he total shot 4 times, and he freaked the gods out, and they started running and like falling all over themselves, moving as fast as they could back towards the water to kind of like retreat because they felt like they were being attacked. And through all of their scrambling, they caused huge waves on Lake Michigan, which is where the game was happening. And they caused these huge waves that caused all the game to just get in a total like chaotic mess. And the players were just like, oh my God, Manabozho, like, you know, this had to have been him. They come together and they're all talking to each other like, what could have happened? And they all were like, it had to have been Manabozho because nobody else would attack the underground gods like that. And so they decided that they needed to confront Manabozho, and when they went to look for him, he was gone. So they decided that they were going to summon the power of all the animals, you know, who were, I guess, humans still at this point, decided they were going to summon the power of the water to go find Manabozho, and the water knew exactly where Manabozho had gone. So Manabozho was running, skipping along, and he was so scared. And he sees this big mountain that has a big pine tree, a lofty pine tree at the top of it. And he thinks, okay, if I try to get to the highest point possible, hopefully I can get there before the water rises. So he's running over there, and the water is just swift, getting close, gonna find him. He's like getting to the point where he's at the end here. And he goes to the brother and he says, oh, brother pine tree, oh, please, can you just grant me this safety? I need help. The water is rising fast. And the pine tree says, Manabozho, I don't have enough power for this. I'm only this tall. Like, I don't know how much more I can grow. I think I can only grow 4 more lengths. And Manabozho said, that'll be fine. Just please hurry. So he's climbing up the tree. And as he's climbing, his feet are wet. The water is rising. And he gets to the top of the pine tree and says, little brother pine, please grow 1 more length. And it grew 1 more length. And he climbs up. And then he prays, oh, little brother pine, please grow a 3rd length. And it grows that 3rd length, and then he's at the top and he has 1 more length, and he prays, oh, please grow that 4th length, little brother pine, so that I may live. And the pine shoots up that final 4th time. Manabozho goes right to the top, and that water at his ankles stopped rising. And that is the end of Manabozho Plays Lacrosse. So in that final part of the story, you know, I think the pine tree shot up 4 times because of he had that much power based on how he shot the gods 4 times. I think that's why he had 4 lengths of the tree. But let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Thank you.